Get up. That's my seat. Her words cut through the air like a blade. My hand froze on the armrest. Excuse me? My voice cracked, not from weakness, but from the weight I already felt pressing on me. You heard me? Her jaw tightened. First class isn't for everyone. A sharp cough broke the silence behind her. Someone shuffled a magazine. Another pulled headphones over their ears, all of them retreating into the safety of pretending not to see. Their silence smothered me more than her demand. I forced my breath steady. Do you hear yourself? Her smirk twisted my gut. People like you. Her words stumbled, but the venom was clear. Should know where you belong. A flight attendant stepped in, voice clipped, eyes avoiding mine. Ma'am, perhaps you could just switch seats. For everyone's comfort, their comfort. Never mind, I muttered, low but firm. So her comfort matters more than my dignity? The attendant's gaze flicked away. It's just easier if... Easier for who? My words cracked out, louder than I intended. Easier for her to spit her poison and sit down like nothing happened? Easier for you to smooth it over while I swallow the humiliation? The woman's arms folded tight. You're making a scene. I almost laughed, bitter heat burning in my chest. A scene? You dragged me on stage the second you opened your mouth. Gasps, whispers, a rustle of movement behind me. None of them daring to speak out loud. She leaned closer, her whisper sharper than a shout. If you don't move, I'll make sure you regret it. I locked my eyes on hers, my hands trembling against my knees. No, I will not move. Not today. Not for you. Not for anyone who thinks my skin disqualifies me from sitting here. For a moment, even the air felt like it stopped. The flight attendant's lips parted, then closed. Passengers turned their faces back to phones and books, hiding in their cowardice. Inside, my chest felt like shattered glass cutting me with every breath. But beneath the shards was something else. Steel. I leaned back, my voice low enough for her but strong enough for them all. That was the night I decided. Their comfort ends where my dignity begins. The air was heavier than the pressurized cabin could explain. Every cough, every shuffle of feet, every forced laugh echoed like judgment. I leaned forward, voice sharp enough to slice the silence. You saw it, you heard it, and you said nothing. The man across the aisle flinched, his tie quivering as he adjusted it. We didn't want to cause a scene. His whisper crawled over me, slick with cowardice. I clenched my jaw. The scene wasn't mine. It was hers. You let her stage it, and you handed me the role of villain. A woman a few seats back muttered, It's just not worth it, flights are tense enough already. My chest burned. Not worth it? My dignity isn't worth your discomfort. You think silence saves you? Silence just crowns her. My colleague, the one who'd flown beside me countless times, finally turned. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. Look, I figured it was better not to escalate. For everyone but me. My throat closed around the words, but I forced them out. You chose peace over justice. You chose your comfort over my humanity. He fumbled with his seatbelt, voice cracking. I didn't mean... You meant everything when you stayed quiet. The whispers multiplied, hissing, through the cabin like snakes. Troublemaker, too loud. Always making it about race. I didn't need their lips to move to hear it. The silence screamed their thoughts. I pressed my hands against my knees, nails biting through cloth. Memories flickered. A classroom where I was told to lower my tone. A boardroom where my ideas were stolen until a white mouth repeated, them. Every silence then sounded like this silence now. The flight attendant reappeared, eyes darting. Please, let's just keep calm. Calm? My voice shook, but not with fear anymore. You want me calm while she spits at me? You want me calm while they bury their heads in safety? You want me calm while I carry the weight of their silence? Her lips parted, then sealed again. I leaned back, breathing slow, steady, deliberate. My heart thundered, but beneath it was steel, I whispered, mostly to myself, but loud enough for them all. If you won't speak for me, then I will speak for myself. The hum of the engines swallowed their shame. The aisle stretched like a canyon between us, filled not with distance, but with betrayal. And in that canyon, I sat alone, but I sat unbroken. Their laughter leaked through the crack of the conference. Room door before I even stepped inside. She overreacted. One voice chuckled, low but sharp enough to pierce me. It's just a seat. Another voice chimed in, dripping with smugness. Funny how the loudest ones are always the ones already. At the top, my pulse slammed in my ears. I pushed the door open, slow, deliberate. Their grins faltered but didn't disappear. I pulled out a chair, the scrape loud against the polished floor. You think humiliation is just a seat? My voice trembled, not from weakness, but from fury boiling beneath my ribs. A man shifted, in his chair, avoiding my eyes. We weren't talking about... Yes, you were. My fists pressed into the table. You were talking about me, about what I lived, about what you sat silent for. One of them shrugged, lips curling. You're making it bigger than it is. Bigger? I leaned forward, heat in my throat. She told me I didn't belong. She spat it in front of you. And you call it small? You call it nothing? The silence that followed was thicker than cement. My colleague across the table whispered, We thought it would fade. If you ignored it, maybe it would disappear. My stomach twisted. Fade? You want my skin to fade? My voice to fade? My dignity to fade? That's the comfort you protect? Their eyes darted around, none meeting mine. Cowards. Every last one. I exhaled, slow, heavy, letting the weight of the room settle. Inside me, something shifted, steel forming where they tried to carve out weakness. My title shielded me from nothing. My skin condemned me still. The words cracked out before I could swallow them back. No one moved. I stood, chair scraping behind me. You can sit in your whispers. I'll stand in the truth. If you won't fight for me, I'll fight for myself. The door slammed behind me, but the sound that echoed louder was my resolve. In that instant, I knew this wasn't ending in silence. It was beginning in court. The door clicked shut behind me, the soft thud sealing in the weight of everything I carried. Papers stacked on his desk rustled as he looked up, adjusting his glasses. His eyes lingered on me a little too long, as if measuring whether I was ready for what I was about to unleash. Have a seat, he murmured, gesturing toward the leather chair across from him. I lowered myself, my palms slick, my throat dry. He leaned forward. I read the reports. The complaint is clear. But what you're asking for... He tapped the papers, the sound sharp. 50 million is not just money, it's war. My chest tightened, but my voice cut steady. It's justice. They stripped me in front of 100 witnesses. I'll strip them in court. His brow furrowed and he rubbed his temple. Courts don't run on feelings. They run on evidence, credibility, and patience. If we go this route, they'll dig into your past, your career, your family. They'll try to break you down until you're the one on trial. I clenched my fists against my knees. They already broke me down in that aisle. I sat there, a spectacle, while silence strangled me. If I don't fight now, I'll be living that night forever. He exhaled, slow, heavy. You could settle. Quietly. Avoid the headlines. Quietly? My voice cracked, louder than I intended. They humiliated me loudly. They made sure everyone heard it. You want me to bury my dignity in silence again? He shifted, his gaze flicking away. "I'm trying to protect you." "No," I muttered, shaking my head. "You're trying to protect them, protect their comfort, protect the idea that this was a misunderstanding, a small thing." My throat burned. It wasn't small. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a verdict handed down in the middle of that plane, that my skin was a crime. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. He finally spoke, softer. "You know what they'll say, don't you? Ambitious CEO exploiting an incident for profit." "Let them," I snapped, heat trembling in my words. "Let them smear me. My reputation will heal, but my silence won't." He rubbed the bridge of his nose, muttering, "You'll need witnesses." They were there. They heard her. They saw me. I paused, bitterness biting my tongue. "But they'll pretend they didn't, just like they did that night." His pen rolled between his fingers. "Then it comes down to whether you're prepared to be hated louder than you've ever been loved." My breath caught, but steel held me upright. I've carried their hate in whispers and looks all my life. I'd rather face it shouted, in daylight, than smother under it in silence. His eyes lifted finally, holding mine. For a moment, something cracked in his careful facade. Respect or maybe resignation. "You understand?" he said, his voice firm now. "If we win, this doesn't just hit their wallet. It brands them, publicly, forever." "That's the point," I whispered. "Money fades. Shame lingers." The clock on the wall ticked louder than our breathing. He tapped the file once more, then pushed it toward me. "All right," he murmured, resolve threading into his voice. "Then we begin." A strange calm spread through me, the kind that comes not from peace, but from decision. My fingers brushed the edge of the file, and for the first time since that night, I felt my grip tighten not on rage, but on purpose. Stood, steadying my breath. They thought silence was my sentence. Instead, it will be their evidence. His nod was small, but it was enough. As I walked out, the hum of the city beyond the office windows sounded less like noise, more like a drumbeat. War had been declared, and I was ready. The cameras found me before I even reached the courthouse steps. Microphones thrust forward, questions spit like bullets. "Are you suing for money or attention?" one reporter barked. Another shouted over. "Him? Do you think this will divide communities even further?" I tightened my jaw, my hand trembling against the railing. "I'm suing because my dignity isn't negotiable. Not for money, not for comfort, not for silence." Flashes exploded. Their pens scribbled my defiance into ink they would twist. Later that evening, the phone rang. Her voice slipped through the line. A friend I once trusted. "Why drag this out?" she whispered, as if ashamed even to speak to me. "You'll ruin your reputation." I bit my lip until it bled. "My silence already ruined it. You're bigger than this. Let it go." "Bigger?" My laugh broke into a choke. I sat on that plane, reduced to nothing. I became small enough for her to step on. Don't you dare tell me I'm bigger by staying small again. She sighed, heavy, rehearsed. "People are saying you want headlines, not justice." I pressed the phone harder against my ear. "Headlines fade, but humiliation lingers. I refuse to live gagged so others can stay comfortable." The line went quiet. She didn't hang up. She just let the silence do the betraying. I closed my eyes, memory dragging me back to the aisle, the smirks, the whispers, the cowardly faces buried in books. Their silence branded me guilty. This time I spoke louder, even mocked, even twisted. My words were mine. They could call me bitter. They could call me loud. They could call me greedy. But they would never again call me silent. The hum of the dial. Tone cut through my ear. I set the phone down, the weight of betrayal pressing my chest. Yet beneath it, I felt something steadier rising, a power I hadn't known I owned until I used my voice. Tomorrow, the headlines would paint me as villain or hero. I didn't care which, because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to define me. I had spoken, and the world had no choice but to hear. The papers landed on the desk with a dull slap. My lawyer slid them across to me, his eyes shadowed. "You need to see this," he muttered, almost reluctant. I pulled the stack closer, my fingers trembling against the edges. "What is it?" "Internal emails," he sighed, flipping one open. He read aloud, his voice low, bitter. "Keep them in coach where they belong. That's their words, not mine." The letters blurred in front of me, black ink dripping like poison into my chest. My throat closed. So it wasn't just me. I whispered it, but the words carried the weight of generations. It was all of us. He nodded grimly. This wasn't an isolated incident. It's policy, culture, baked into the way they talk when they think no one is watching. I pressed my palm flat against the page as if to steady it, as if to stop it from cutting deeper. They laughed while we suffered. He turned another sheet, voice taut. "First class isn't for charity cases. Don't let them sit where they don't belong." I flinched, the echo of her voice on the plane crashing back. "You should know where you belong." The same sentence, dressed in corporate ink. "They didn't just humiliate me," I whispered, my nails biting into the wood of the table. "They institutionalized humiliation. They made it routine." He leaned forward, his hands folded, his face drawn. This changes the case. It's not just personal damages anymore. This is systemic discrimination. If we put this in front of a jury," I cut him off, my voice trembling but fierce. "They'll finally see what silence covers, not just my silence, but every silence they've buried under policy." He hesitated, watching me, maybe questioning if I was ready for the storm these words would summon. I shook my head, fists tightening. I lived my whole life thinking each slight was mine alone to carry. But this, I slapped the papers. "This proves it was never just me, it was all of us." He exhaled, murmuring, "It could mean a settlement. They won't want this public." "No." My voice cracked, rising. "I don't want hush money. I want their shame dragged into daylight. I want the world to read every word they wrote." His pen stilled. "You're certain?" I met his eyes, my chest burning. I've never been more certain. They thought my story would end with silence. Instead, it will begin with exposure. The fluorescent lights hummed above, harsh and unyielding. For a moment, they felt like a spotlight, not just on me, but on every passenger who'd been told without words that they didn't belong, I whispered, my voice carrying beyond the office walls. "This isn't just my fight anymore. It's a reckoning." And in that silence, I swore I heard the ground shift, the quiet before an earthquake. The gavel struck, and the sound rattled through my bones. I rose slowly, each step to the witness stand echoing like judgment. My palms were slick, but my spine refused to bend. The airline's lawyer smirked, as if the trial was already his victory. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with condescension. "Isn't it possible you misunderstood?" I swallowed hard, my throat raw. "Misunderstood?" My voice shook, then steadied. "She told me my skin disqualified me. I didn't mishear hatred. I lived it." A murmur rippled across the courtroom. Benches. The lawyer raised his brows, mock sympathy twisting his features. "Or perhaps you're exaggerating. People say things in the heat of the moment. Surely you don't expect us to believe she meant it literally." Heat surged through me. "Literally?" She looked me in the eye and ordered me out of my seat. She made sure everyone heard her. And they sat in silence, letting her words become law. The judge's gavel tapped once, warning the gallery into silence. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp. The weight of his gaze pressed on me, but I held it. The lawyer adjusted his papers. Tell us then, did anyone else confirm your version? Or is this your interpretation? My fists tightened against the wood of the stand. Their silence was confirmation. Every lowered gaze, every cough, every turned head was testimony. You want proof? Proof is in the emails your airline wrote. Keep them in coach where they belong. The words match. The venom matches. Gasps spread like fire across the room. Even the stenographer's keys faltered. The lawyer stuttered, flipping through his notes. Let's stay on the incident, please. A simple misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Stop calling it that. My voice cracked but carried. You call it misunderstanding because you've never been forced to swallow humiliation until it chokes you. You've never sat in a seat you paid for and been told you don't belong because of your skin. You've never looked around for help and seen only silence staring back. A tear slid hot down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it. Don't tell me it was small. Don't tell me it was heat of the moment. It was history replaying itself in real time, and I refused to let it pass as another forgotten whisper. The judge's eyes narrowed, leaning closer. The air thickened. Even the lawyer's smugness cracked at the edges. I gripped the stand, my knuckles white. This case is not about a misunderstanding. It's about a message. Her words were a verdict, handed down in public. My body was the evidence, and their silence was the jury. I will not let that verdict stand unchallenged. The room went still, the kind of silence that trembles with truth too sharp to ignore. The lawyer's lips pressed thin. He shifted in his seat, his confidence slipping like sand. No further questions, he muttered. The gavel struck again, but this time it sounded different, not like order but like acknowledgement. As I stepped down, every eye followed me. For the first time, their silence didn't suffocate me. It carried something else. Weight. Recognition. The turning point wasn't the gavel or the lawyer's retreat. It was the soundless gasp of a courtroom realizing the truth was heavier than their excuses. And I knew. My voice had cut through their silence. The courtroom lights burned hotter than the sun. I watched her walk to the stand, the same woman who had ordered me out of my seat as if I were a trespasser in my own life. Her stride wasn't as sharp now. Her eyes darted like trapped birds. The lawyer's voice prodded her. Did you or did you not tell the plaintiff she didn't belong in first class? Her lips trembled. I didn't mean it that way. It was a bad day. My nails dug into my palms. A bad day? My humiliation reduced to the mood of her morning coffee. I rose, leaning toward the microphone, my voice low but carrying. And my life was your outlet. Gasps fluttered across the benches. She froze, mouth quivering open. The lawyer stammered. Surely you can explain. She shook her head, words spilling out in fragments. I felt it was crowded. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking. I snapped, my throat raw. You were thinking that my skin erased my ticket. You were thinking your comfort mattered more than my dignity. You were thinking the world would nod along, because it always has. The judge's gavel tapped, but the silence that followed was already deafening. The airline executive shifted in his seat, his collar damp. My lawyer slid another sheet onto the evidence table. His voice rang. Email, subject line, keep them in coach. Care to explain why your staff writes this language internally? The executive muttered, avoiding the jury's eyes. That was just banter. Poor judgment. Poor judgment! My voice cracked like thunder. Your poor judgment is my scar. Your banter is my humiliation. You laughed at us in boardrooms, then let her spit the same words in public. The executives. Hands shook. We never intended. You intended silence, I cut in. You intended complicity. You intended to keep us in the shadows while your comfort thrived in the light. The jury leaned forward, their faces tight. Even strangers in the back row held their breath. The passenger sobbed suddenly, her words choking out. I didn't mean to ruin you. I was just angry. And you chose me as your target. My whisper sliced sharper than any shout. Every system told you it was safe. Every silence told you I was expendable. And you believed them. Her tears dripped, but they fell too late, too shallow. I looked at her, then at the executives squirming in their polished chairs. For once, I wasn't the one exposed, the judges. Gavel slammed, steadying the storm, but the damage was already done. Their collapse wasn't in a single word. It was in the cracks running through their voices, the sweat on their brows, the shame blooming in the jury's eyes as they realized how deep the rot went. I straightened, the heat in my chest no longer. Burning me alive but forging me solid, I whispered again, softer this time, but it carried. You never saw me as human, and now the world sees you. The room shifted, gasps, silence, and then only the pounding of my heart, steady, unbroken, louder than their downfall. The jury filed back into the room, their faces tight, unreadable. My heartbeat pounded in my throat like a gavel already striking. I clutched the edge of the table, my knuckles white. The judge cleared his throat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreperson stood, voice steady. We have, Your Honor. I held my breath, every nerve stretched. The judge nodded. Proceed. The words came slow, deliberate. We find in favor of the plaintiff. Gasps rippled across the courtroom, a wave breaking against the walls. My chest tightened, not in fear, but in release. The judge leaned forward, his voice grave, his eyes heavy with weight. This court recognizes the dignity denied and awards damages accordingly. $50 million. The room exploded in whispers, shocked murmurs darting like sparks through dry grass. My throat constricted. 50 million. Numbers too big to fit in my hands, yet not nearly enough to measure the cost. The airline's lawyer slumped, his papers rattling as though trembling with him. The executives stared down, faces drained, their polished arrogance cracked open. I rose slowly, my voice trembling but firm. Money cannot buy dignity, but it can carve a warning into history. This verdict is not for me alone. It's for every silence that let humiliation breathe. It's for every seat we were told we didn't belong in. The judge struck his gavel once, but even he could not quiet the rumble of the crowd. A reporter shouted, "Do you feel victorious?" I turned, the cameras burning into my skin. I feel seen, and I will not be unseen again. Tears welled, but I didn't hide them. They weren't weakness. They were testimony. The passenger who once smirked now sobbed, her voice cracking. I never thought it would come to this. I looked at her, my jaw tightening. Neither did I. But you thought it would end in silence. Today proves it won't. The courtroom hushed, as though even the air wanted to remember the moment. I breathed deep, the weight of the verdict settling not as a crown, but as armor. They had tried to strip me in front of 100 strangers. Now the court had stripped them in front of the world, and I whispered to myself, steady and certain, their comfort ends where my dignity begins. The park was quieter than I remembered. Wind moved gently through the trees, scattering brittle leaves across the path. I sat on a bench, the wood cool beneath me, and let my breath slow. For the first time in months, there was no gavel, no camera, no sneer waiting to twist my truth into something smaller. Just air. Just silence. But silence felt different now. It no longer suffocated me. It carried weight, not absence. A woman passed slowly, her steps hesitant. She glanced at me, then back again, as if gathering courage. Her voice barely reached me, a whisper trembling in the air. Thank you. You fought for us all. My throat tightened. I nodded, words pressing against my lips but refusing to spill. For so long my voice had been my weapon. Now her voice carried mine forward. I looked down at my hands, remembering how They had shaken that night on the plane when I clutched the armrest, refusing to move. I had felt small then, shrunken under the weight of one woman's command and 100 strangers' silence. Now, those same hands had signed the lawsuit that cracked their silence wide open. I heard her words again. Thank you. You fought for us all. And I realized the verdict wasn't just about me. It was about every passenger who had been shifted to the margins, every child told to sit quiet, every worker forced to swallow humiliation to keep their job. It was about the ones too tired to fight, the ones too afraid, the ones who had learned to carry silence as survival. My chest rose and I whispered into the wind, "Their comfort ends where our dignity begins." The phrase settled in me, a promise, not just a memory. A man walking his dog paused near the bench, recognition flickering in his eyes. He didn't speak, but his nod lingered longer than politeness required. A quiet acknowledgement. I felt it land inside me like a stone placed carefully on a grave. Weight, respect, permanence. I closed my eyes, replaying the courtroom, the gasps when the verdict rang out. $50 million. The number had stunned them, silenced them, but it wasn't the money that mattered. It was the warning etched into history that dignity denied would not vanish into air, it would come back louder, heavier, undeniable. Money couldn't buy back that night, the aisle that became a stage of humiliation. It couldn't erase the smirks, the cowardly silence, the sting of being told I didn't belong where I had earned the right to sit. But it carved something larger, a record, a scar they couldn't hide. I touched my chest, where the shame had once lived like a stone. It wasn't gone, but it was no longer mine to carry alone. A child's laughter rang across the park. I opened my eyes, watching him chase a ball down the slope, his joy loud, unashamed. For a moment, I let myself hope that he would grow into a world where silence wouldn't strangle his worth, where no seat would tell him he didn't belong. The wind picked up again, brushing against my face like a hand steadying me. I rose from the bench, my legs firm. I had been stripped once in public, my humanity treated like an inconvenience. But today, standing in the open air, I knew I had reclaimed it, not only for myself but for those whose voices had been buried too long. As I walked away, the words followed me, not as anger now, but as truth etched into me forever. Their comfort ends where our dignity begins.